rules are simple. Only use units or heroes that are introduced in each mission. For example, Hydras and Shoot the Messenger. Drones and Overlords are allowed, obviously. If an old unit is needed to morph a new unit, it's allowed. For example, Zerglings for Banelings in Domination. If a mission doesn't introduce any new units, build or rescue only starting units. For example, Zerglings and Banelings in Fire in the Sky. For Infested, use only parasitic-dominated units for battle. If a new unit cannot shoot up, spores are allowed for defense. Only use Kerrigan abilities for non-combat purposes. The only exception for this is when rule number 2 is active. For added challenge, I won't use mutations or evolutions in combat. The run will be done on brutal difficulty, because B comes first in the alphabet. Labrat introduces drones, overlords, and zerglings. Drones make buildings, overlords provide control, and zerglings serve as cheap frontline attackers. They excel at swarming targets, but suck against splash damage and can't shoot up. Thankfully, Valerian's security protocols consist of some trashy robots and some gas turrets.
You made a mess down there, Sarah.
Now, considering the last time that Kerrigan controlled Zerg,
devastation spread throughout all Outer Rim planets. Sustained heavy losses.
Casualties in the billions.
I'd be a bit more concerned. But as a noob, it's not my place to monitor the mental well-being of the worst mass murderer in history. Back in the Saddle only gives me Kerrigan. Since she becomes a dinosaur later, I'll treat this as the debut of her human form, and Supreme as the debut of her dino form. Anywho, the mission is pretty straightforward. Use Kinetic Blast to snipe priority targets and Crushing Grip to stun groups of enemies. Now, why this random Marine gets past Humogin lines, and why Raynor doesn't just wait until Kerrigan beats the Archangel so she can lift him across or pick him up with the dropship is beyond me. But as a noob, it's not my place to question evacuation protocols from a totalitarian dictatorship. Rendezvous introduces the Swarm Queen, a healer that can spread creep and shoot up. Unfortunately, it's really frail. I suppose Spine Crawlers could be counted as a new unit, so with a mix of Swarm Queens and Spine Crawlers, I proceed to lower the difficulty to hard. After holding out for 15 minutes, I gather my queens and overrun the main base. Next, I head to Calder.
Pi, why is Kerrigan primal already?
Well, you see, my space-time shenanigans seem to be interfering with my run again. It's totally not because I'm playing in the Master Archives, and it's assuming I'm playing Calder after Xeris for some reason. Anywho, there's a Zerg broodmother who apparently has Zerg with special adaptations, the Roach and the Hydralisk. Now, why Kerrigan doesn't just get the roaches and hydras from Zagara's brood, or any of the other Zerg-infested planets she visits, is beyond me. But as a noob, it's not my place to question strategic decisions when leading a group of spiky bugs. Harvest of Screams introduces roaches, armored assault units that can heal when burrowed. I need to destroy 3 Silent Spires to stop the Protoss from calling in reinforcements. The idea is to use the frequent flash freezes to attack the bases while they're frozen in place. Now, I've already picked apart this mission for various reasons, like the lack of a time limit and the Protoss having no protection against the freezing cold, but as a noob, it's not my place to question mission logic. With a force of roaches, I push through each spire, and the mission ends. Shoot the Messenger introduces the Hydralisk, a ranged attacker that excels at anti-air but is super frail. So naturally, it's introduced on a mission that has numerous Colossi, High Templar, Immortals, and Archons. Anywho, I need to commit several non-peaceful actions, including shooting down several waves of shuttles filled with civilians. Now, why the Protoss need to send their shuttles to the conduits instead of just flying directly into orbit, or why they didn't start evacuating immediately after Kerrigan showed up, or why they didn't start sending multiple shuttles in different directions immediately, or why Kerrigan didn't just leave after getting Hydras, or why the conduits were completely unguarded in the first place. Anywho, Noob Challenge, no time to question things. By spreading creep, I mitigate the Hydra's lack of speed. By splitting my forces, I intercept and pick off the shuttles wherever they fly. Eventually, the deed is done, and the mission ends. Enemy Within is a cool mission from a gameplay aspect. It's less cool from a logic aspect. Where do I begin?
Let's see, warping a lone survivor aboard without scanning her for foreign bodies, especially after escaping a Zerg-infested world. Warping the survivor into an area with very little security. Warping the survivor into an area with no surveillance. Having no failsafe to destroy infestable biomass in the event of a Zerg attack. Not evacuating as soon as the warp drive was disabled.
Anyways, Noob Challenge, no time to ask questions. The mission only gives me Neadra, who can heal and spawn old units, which I'm not supposed to use. Unfortunately, Neadra is pretty weak in single combat.
Clever Protoss. They are setting up defenses.
Neadra, hatch Zerglings and destroy them.
I shouldn't. It's not the noob way. do it. Ultimately, I have to spawn other units to beat this mission. The only consolation is that these units are spawned from Niadra, so technically I'm still using parts of her to win the mission. So it's perfectly legal, from a certain point of view. Waking the Ancient introduces the Mutalisk, who can hit multiple targets and excels at harassment. I need to destroy 7 Quillgore packs around the map to awaken some guy named the Ancient One. Now, how Brack is able to communicate with the Swarm when the Primal Zerg haven't been in contact with the Hive-Mind in millennia is beyond me. Noob challenge, no time to question it. The mission is fairly straightforward. Clear paths to the Quillgore, split up mutas to defend my base drones and intercept Brack's raiding parties, and kill Brack at the end. Crucible introduces the Swarm Host, a siege unit that spawns units with timed life. It's not great, but I'll make do. I need to protect Kerrigan's cocoon until she hatches. Now, given that the Leviathan is a thing, it's odd that Kerrigan doesn't use it to protect her during her transformation. But as a noob, I don't have time to question tactical decisions on a planet of dinosaurs. Anywho, to defend my base, I form 3 separate groups of swarm hosts at each entrance, while also building up my spores to fend off enemy attacks. The mission also introduces primal locusts, small flyers that can periodically be spawned to help ease pressure on my base. Now, the biggest dilemma in this mission is the bonus. Normally, a pro would either use Mutalisks or tunneling claw roaches to reach the Tyrannosaur, but as a noob, I don't have time for practical solutions, so I build a hatchery down south instead. By rushing out swarm hosts and avoiding contact with primal forces, I proceed to hide behind the hatchery and whittle down the Tyrannosaur while it attacks my hatchery for some reason. Eventually, I hold out until Kerrigan hatches, and the mission ends. Supreme gives me Primal Kerrigan, who's basically Kerrigan but 20% more purple. I also get a mix of Primal Roaches, Hydras, and Ultras, which are basically the same as their Zerg counterparts but 20% more dinosaur. Anywho, the mission is fairly straightforward. Use Kerrigan's abilities, take down each boss, and win. Domination introduces Banelings, units that cause splash damage by returning to the afterlife. The only downside is that I do need to use Zerglings to make them, but in the spirit of the run I keep them out of combat. The issue is that they're not effective against armored units, meaning they're not effective at beating Zagara in direct combat. Now, a smarter player would use Zerglings, Roaches, or Hydras to provide support, but as a noob, I don't have time to use viable unit compositions. Of course, I only need to collect 100 eggs to spawn a larger army, so I build small packs of Banelings to defend my nest and rush the eggs with Primal Kerrigan. While I can't use her powers in combat, I can use Psionic Shift to boost her speed, as well as Mend and Heroic Fortitude to keep her alive. To aid in bypassing the enemy, I also take the various Baneling egg nests around the map. After spawning my egg army, I take out the bonuses, remax on Banelings, and swarm Zagara's base. As per Rule 2, I'll only be building and rescuing units based on my starting army. I'm sure it won't be that bad. You know what? Maybe Kerrigan is a starting unit. To challenge myself, I stick to her moveset from the previous mission, which was designed to run away from my problems, not fight them. Also, my army is still complete garbage. Anywho, I need to spread creep to 7 Scourge nests to destroy Warfield's fleet. Now, why he keeps sending Gorgons after I destroy the first few is beyond me. Why he doesn't bother sending Ravens or strike teams to the Scourge nests until he only has 2 Gorgons left is even more baffling. But given how badly he botched the Char invasion, I suppose these blunders are to be expected. After running out of resources and cannon fodder, I sneak a creep tumor to the final nest, and the mission ends. Old Soldier starts off with Kerrigan enjoying the nice evening breeze.
We're running out of time.
Wipe them out, men! These bugs will never take Char.
Once the mission officially begins, I get access to Aberrations, tanky anti-armor units that can walk over smaller troops. They're good against enemy armor, but struggle against masses of light units. I need to breach Warfield's compound at the end of the map, while he constantly launches nukes at my army. Now, why Warfield doesn't just save his nukes for another massive barrage to destroy my hive is beyond me. But as a noob, it's not my place to question strategic decisions when fighting an alien invasion. Anywho, to break through Warfield's lines, I get at least 20 to 30 Aberrations and send them to breach the nearby expansions. To counter large groups of Marines, I walk my tall boys over them, sending them to the afterlife in a tide of slapping. While I run out of resources, after dozens of resets, my forces just barely destroy the compound entrance, ending the mission. Infested only gives me Infestors, which aren't combat units, but they can damage enemies with fungal growth. So I try to go Infested only, using fungals to stun and destroy enemy attacks while supporting the allied Infested and
We have lost a virophage.
I decide to only use parasitic-dominated units, seizing control of enemy tanks, science vessels, banshees, Vikings, Thors, and battle cruisers, allowing me to slowly build up a mech force to push to each garrison and infest them. Eventually, my totally ethical army breaches the lab entrance, and the mission ends. Hand of Darkness doesn't introduce any new units, so as per rule number 2, I get to build Zerglings, Roaches, and Aberration, and my army got destroyed. As it turns out, not using mutations or evolutions on Brutal means my army is absolute garbage, so I lowered the difficulty to hard. Normal! I had to lower it to normal. Since the hybrid are much weaker on normal, I use the expert tactic of facing my problems directly, melting them with mass roach. I also make sure to save the 2 Brutalisks, which are slow tanks that have pretty decent anti-air. Now, why Noob doesn't just wake up all the hybrid at once to overwhelm Kerrigan is beyond me, but as a noob, there's no time to question strategic decisions against an army of spiky bugs. Anywho, eventually my army destroys both the Dominion and the hybrid, and the mission ends. Phantoms of the Void introduces Ultras, tanky frontline assault units that excel against masses of light units. They can't shoot up, but the mission also introduces Stukov, who can shoot up, fires corrosive bolts at priority targets, and spawns additional infested marines. I need to push to 5 temples to keep Nerud from erasing Kerrigan from existence. Now, why Nerud isn't using his headache hybrid to attack Kerrigan or ordering his troops to directly attack her is beyond me, but as a noob, there's no time to question the competence of an ancient shape-shifting scientist. Anywho, using Stukov to harass and weaken the temple defenders, I push to each temple and keep Stukov alive with a wall of Ultralisks. To deal with enemy Void Rays, Colossi, and Hybrid, I use corrosive bolts and infested marines to focus them down. Despite losing most of my army, I buy enough time to deactivate the temples, and the mission ends. With friends like these introduces the Hyperion, a powerful capital ship that can launch fighters, fire plasma, and teleport. It's good at long-range attacks, but weak to masses of light ships. I need to destroy Mira Sleep because she refuses to let me talk to Colonel Orlan for finding Raynor, because I need Raynor's permission to get Orlan to help find Raynor. Now, all of this could have been avoided if Raynor's contract with Mira had some kind of clause that allowed other raiders to manage business with her in the event of Raynor being incapacitated, or if Matt just made a contract with Mira to get access to Orlan for a favor of her choosing, if you know what I mean. But this is the Noob Challenge, and I don't have time to question pragmatism or proper conduct against a crime lord. Anywho, the mission is fairly straightforward. Use TAC fighters against light ships, use pneumato cannons on towers and BCs, use EMP whenever there's too many enemies. Conviction only starts me with Kerrigan, so I try to win the mission with Kerrigan only. To aid my rescue attempt, I choose Kinetic Blast for priority targets, Chain Lightning for splash damage, Men to keep her alive, and Infest Broodling to deal with masses of marines. While I push through the initial defenders, I lose control of Kerrigan because of a door.
An unclassifiable psi signature has trouble opening a door.
It's like nothing I faced before.
But you destroyed the Ancient One. You captured the power of War Zerg.
This is something born of the void, cold and empty, but so powerful it hurts.
Anywho, I do need to use reinforcements to defend Kerrigan for this segment, otherwise she deals with the first half of the mission fairly well. Then Mex tries blowing up the ship. Now, why he didn't start the self-destruct sequence immediately or order his guards to threaten Raynor is beyond me. Noob Challenge, no time to question the actions of a megalomaniac tyrant. Unfortunately, the second area is too well defended, and the time limit prevents me from using Kerrigan alone, who once again struggles with opening more doors. So I have to use my troops to complete the mission. The remaining missions don't introduce any new units, so I can only make units for my starting army as per Rule 2. With an army of Roaches, Hydras, and Mutas, I proceed to lose a lot. I don't want to lower the difficulty again, so you know what, as per Rule number 2, maybe Kerrigan is a starting unit. To make things more challenging, I stick to her moveset for running away from her problems to instead run towards my problems.
Boy, isn't it cheap to use Kerrigan to beat these missions?
Well, yes, but this is called the Noob Challenge, and what's more noob-like than using the Crutch Hero character to beat these missions? I need to defend 5 bio-launchers that land around the map. Now, you'd think that Kerrigan would just drop her army on top of the palace to make things easier, but the mission addresses this because Valerian asked her to land outside the city. Because Kerrigan's such a good person now, she obviously complies. Never mind the fact that she wiped out an entire colony of Protoss, killed countless animals on various worlds, and continues to end countless lives for petty revenge. Anyways, Noob Challenge, no time to question character arcs or story. With a mix of Roach, Hydra, Speedigan, I rush around the map, beating back the Dominion armor, and ending the mission. Death from Above introduces Dahaka, a dinosaur that can jump up cliffs, heal, drag enemies to him, and spawn copies of himself. I also get a diverse force of Swarm Queens, Zerglings, Aberrations, and Roaches which proceed to die. Okay, maybe Speedigan is a starting unit too. I need to destroy the power links to disable the Psi Destroyer permanently. In between reactivations, I'm supposed to attack the Dominion forces. Now, why Kerrigan doesn't just attack all 3 links at the same time is beyond me, but as a noob, it's not my place to question strategy during an alien invasion. After permanently disabling the Psi Destroyer, I send forth a horde of Aberrations, Roaches, Swarm Queens, Speedigan, and Dahaka, using their abilities to double heal my army and Dahaka's pull to neutralize tanks and battlecruisers. Eventually, I overwhelm the Psi Destroyer, and the mission ends. The Reckoning finally gives me a good starting force, with Zerglings, Roaches, Hydra, Swarm Queens, and Aberrations, allowing me to die to Mass Marine Marauder. You knew it was coming, Kerrigan's a starting unit again. Anywho, I need to babysit Raynor for half an hour and breach the Palace Gate. Using a mix of Roach, Aberration, Hydra, Swarm Queen, Zergling, Speedigan, I smash through each enemy base and run out of resources. But I still managed to finish off the palace entrance, ending the mission.
It was nice of your criminal partner to
Feel the thunder!
So can you? No. No, you cannot. Neadra is not enough to beat enemy within alone. Conviction requires me to use units other than Kerrigan to win, and Infested required me to use parasitic-domination on old units. Plus, all the missions that don't introduce any new units require me to use units that I've used before. But how many missions could I do using the unit introduced? In total, only 11 out of 20 missions can truly be done using the unit introduced for combat. If we include Rendezvous and Hand of Darkness, where I had to lower the difficulty, this increases to 13 out of 20. If we include missions where I didn't get any new units and only made or rescued starting units, including Speedigan, this increases to 17 out of 20, 85%. As for evolution missions, it's kind of weird. Like, each mission introduces new evolutions, but you also kinda need the base units to do parts of them, so I'll say at the very least, 50% of each mission can be done with new units, totaling 3.5 out of 7 missions. At the most, 75% of each mission can be done with new units, totaling at a 5.25 out of 7 missions. This leaves an average of 4.37 out of 7 evolution missions that can be done with new units, 62%. The problem with Heart of the Swarm is that because so much of it is centered around Kerrigan or crazy evolutions, the enemies are balanced around you having access to said overpowered things. So naturally, since I tried not to use said overpowered things, my army was outclassed well before the end of the campaign. It doesn't help that there's fewer units introduced than in Wings of Liberty, leading to several missions in the middle of the campaign where I had a pathetic starting army and an annoying time limit to deal with. Hopefully Legacy and Nova Covert Ops go better for me. Remember, Patrick Starr, shoutouts to Ozzy G-Man, Gladys Marino, Happy Acrid, and Scott Replinger for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and run towards your problems by running away from them.